Abandoned ship. We're not caring about this car. We're thinking about the next year.
Exit clauses, yada yada yada.
Hulkenberg is the blue shell right now. Angle grinder guy, he gets a raise.
There you go.
Whoa.
He gets both salaries.
There you go.
What are they doing with the 5th and 6th seats?
Yeah, it's just Weenie Hut Formula One Junior now.
They don't fire up the same way that F1 cars do.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tyred Boys podcast. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back. We have a big recap day today with the Monaco Grand Prix, as well as the biggest day in motorsport with the Indy 500. We'll have in the quick hitters, along with a little bit of the Coca-Cola 600. But Justin, it's good to see you. Glad that we get to chit chat about all the excitement of Monaco.
Yeah, coming off one of the, biggest weekends in motorsport. There's a lot going on from literally from the time you wake up, from the time you go to bed. There was motorsport action. There's coverage coming at you. Seeing from Monaco, the star-studded grid there. Then shifting to the IndyCar 500, seeing the oh my gosh, his name escapes me. Seeing the football player doing his thing. So yeah, just like the biggest weekend here, and I'm excited to talk all about it.
Yeah, and starting off with the quick hitters, getting into the Indy 500 a little bit. We kicked off the Indy 500 weekend with the Weenie 500. Oscar Mayer had all of their Oscar Mayer Wienermobiles show up at Indy, and they did a few laps out on track, racing with their top speed of 60 miles an hour that those Weenie Mobiles can hit.
That's pretty great.
Yeah, I was actually a little surprised that they go that quickly, but watching it looks unbelievably slow watching them when you're so used to how fast these cars are going out on the oval track there at Indy. But the Slaw Dog came out on top, made a run off the last corner, was about 2 buns behind up until the end, just wins by just the must, gets that last little bit of mustard to push through and take the win for the Weenie 500, first annual Weenie 500 there. But getting into some of the other things from this week. So after the Indy qualifying disqualifications that we had talked about last week's episode, Team Penske went and cleaned house basically with their front office. They parted ways with their IndyCar team president, managing director, and general manager for the team. Roger Penske basically said that nothing is more important than the integrity of the sport. And so for the organization to have these failures over a couple of years and have these kind of issues with the disqualification, he's like, we can't stand by that while things are not really above board. So I find that very refreshing kind of to see. It sucks for those people in their organization to be let go from this incident and everything, but at the same time, you would like to see more teams kind of be a little bit more cutthroat when it comes to their managerial staff not keeping things above board. So I was pretty impressed by that decision making from Penske.
Yeah, it's an interesting decision because I feel like it would be very easy to rest on, like, well, like if we're getting an advantage from it, like maybe we don't have to say anything, but to come down on your own organization and say we don't want to be doing things, even if it was just like laziness or not paying as much attention to the regulations as they should have. I like to see a team basically like taking responsibility for its own failures and working to at least in the near term like prevent that from happening in the future, even if like it does set them back. It's like you said, it's kind of refreshing to see them make that trade-off if it is, in the interest of the sport at large. That's kind of very surprising for me to hear. Normally you might think the story would be like, oh yeah, and it seems like they're gonna handle it at all, internally, and a few days go by, there's no more word, everybody's still
Yeah.
in position. It's just like, oh okay, I guess we're just going racing again. But
Yep.
here you can see Team Penske actually like takes it to heart. They don't want to go racing like that, and that's pretty encouraging. I like that. They want to race fair. Good for them.
Yeah, and no room for questions of integrity, especially for Penske being the owner. Like he's looking at this and seeing that reflects negatively on him along with the organization and all. Um, but to kick off the week, and then with that, the Team Penske squad had a pretty brutal Indy 500 as well. Of course, Joseph Newgarden. And Will Power starting from the back of the field. Will Power makes it up to P16 to finish, but Joseph Newgarden ends up not finishing with a fuel pressure issue. Scott McLaughlin, on the other hand, ends up crashing during the warm up laps behind the safety car. So his day ends before it even started. There was some moisture out on the track, and just unfortunately didn't pan out for him to be able to go racing. But overall, the rest of the race was definitely exciting to watch. We saw Robert Schwartzman go and start out from pole. Unfortunately, DNF's partway through the race, but he managed to hold the start pretty well, which I was impressed with. He lost a couple of positions early on, but was still hanging in that top 5 range for quite a while. But of course, we had Alex Palou come through. He seems pretty inevitable right now in terms of the IndyCar scene coming, and with about, I think it was 12 laps to go after a full course caution, that he comes out, gets the lead from Marcus Ericsson, and runs away with it there at the end to win the Indy 500 and kind of check that last box, I think, off his list of things to do in IndyCar. So very impressive from Palou to get that win.
Yeah, that's crazy, and especially in a season where he is like performing so well, even outside of the month of May. It just kind of seems to make sense. Like this is kind of his time. This is his just dominant year. He's gonna win everything that team puts him in a position to, because obviously it's not just about him. There's like, there's a whole team around him as well. So if they're giving him a race winning car, he's definitely capable of it. And it's crazy. It's crazy to see the amount of success this young driver is getting. Even my mom was commenting. My mom's like, he looks so young up there drinking his milk on the podium. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, dude, and this kid, they get younger every year, and he's dominating everybody. So yeah, full respect to Alex Palou. Love to see him get the W in that regard, because like obviously it's not easy. Some drivers are out before you can even begin. You have young drivers getting pole position. A lot of people would argue like, oh, tough to win, tough to lose from that position. So yeah, a lot to overcome in that regard. So yeah, very very cool win for Alex Palou.
Yeah, and I don't think he's had very many oval track wins either, so definitely a something to hang his hat on to get the biggest oval track win out there. Um, but the one kind of final crazy thing that happened today was there were some post race disqualifications that came today, a day after the Indy 500, we had two of the Andretti cars being disqualified due to post race checks, along with the second Prima Racing car. So the Andretti cars, Marcus Ericsson, who finished P2 overall, along with Kyle Kirkwood, were sent down to 31st and 32nd place. And then Callum Ilott for Prima Racing was demoted to 33rd place overall. The two Andretti cars had modifications to their energy management system covers, where they had used a couple of additional parts to, I guess, seal that, provide a little bit more aerodynamic efficiency. And then Prima Racing didn't have the proper end plate height with their car setup and everything for the end plate of the front wing. So unfortunately, those three guys get dropped down. And what ended up seeming the kind of craziest about this is it doesn't appear that any of the teams were really notified before IndyCar made this announcement of the demotions today, because Callum Ilott tweeted out just kind of in confusion, like, I think he just said, it was one word, I think it was just like, what, question mark. And so they were not really aware of what all happened there. But yeah, very very kind of interesting post race situation there with the IndyCar, with the Indy 500 especially, like second place being demoted all the way down to P31.
Yeah, a bit frustrating. You wish it all happens very shortly following the race, but I guess there's like a lot of data to sift through, a lot of scrutineering to be done as well. So yeah, you can't blame him in that regard. I imagine that's got to be massively frustrating for Marcus Ericsson in that regard. So yeah, just post race penalties don't feel good for the viewers, or and I imagine even less for the drivers getting them. So yeah, tough to hear, and yeah, not the best.
Yeah, and it's I'm hoping that this will maybe clear up some of these things with IndyCar, where it seems like they are, or a couple teams have pushed the envelope with what they can do to the car to improve things, and so maybe this will just push for people to like leave things the way that they are and not make those changes, because those are pretty big drops and everything with the point totals. Like in Formula One, you would just like disqualify them, but because every position in IndyCar earns points of some amount, they have to make those post race changes and everything, instead of just saying like they were disqualified. So
Gotcha.
definitely
Okay.
a little bit funky with that. And of course, we also, as a final highlight of the Indy 500, we had our boy Kyle Larson spin out around the 100th lap of 200, and unfortunately was not able to complete the Indy 500 there before he took off for the Coca-Cola 600 in Charlotte, where he managed to do just about the same thing and spun out and crashed in that. So I think, well, you had said before the episode, just maybe focusing on a few too many things all at once to show that being the best driver in the world, that quality of racer that we know him to be.
Yeah, there's like all memes aside, there's a couple of ideas that pop into my head when I think about this. It's like, okay, for the IndyCar 500 specifically, it's like there is a whole month dedicated to the like lead up to this event. Most other drivers that are racing that event, they are like full focus on that race and building towards that event to do a really good job. It feels like it's really hard to prepare for both well. It seems like it would just be adding on extra oval laps just kind of like tacking them on to the end of the day. But the other concept that pops into my head when we talk about this idea is like the idea of a trap game in like a playoff
Mm.
series, where if you are the like undisputed favorite going into like your quarterfinal matchup, let's say you get like first seed versus uh, let's just say like eighth seed, like going into the tournament, whatever. As first seed, you're heavily favored, but guess what? You've got that. Unfortunately, the third seed team, they got drew onto your side of the bracket too, but they get straight into the semifinals. Like you're going to be playing them. So what do? You stop prepping for the eighth place team because you're like, oh, in the bag, we got this. And now all of a sudden, like that's the team that beats you because you were so focused on this other thing. Like you weren't even ready for all of the headaches that the first event is going to throw at you. Now you see the correlation that I'm trying to make.
Oh yeah.
So whether or not he has the skill, the endurance for it, it kind of like what you were alluding to, it just feels like a problem of focus, a problem of preparation, where it's like you have to give these events your full attention, or else you're going to come up just short in each of them. So for a guy that I've thrown a bunch of jokes at, and if you're listening to the show for a while, we've kind of been clowning him the recent months. But it's like for these ideas, it's like he's almost like letting it get to his head in some weird way. And I'm saying that like being gracious, like I'm just he's just a human.
Oh yeah.
So maybe he's like letting it get in his head in a way. It's like, bro, I just want to see you like just win one of the events,
Yeah.
instead of thinking you got to like make a show out of it. Because Alex Palou, he just won one race really well, and that seemed to be enough. Like that's enough of a show, right?
Yeah.
So I hope moving forward, Kyle Larson maybe reins in his expectations of what he's able to do in one day, and stop making these like scheduling conflicts like his personal problem.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, man, just race one, like it's fine. But yeah, next year I hope he's in the Monaco Grand Prix, so then he can get all three. It, my argument is for a problem of focus. Maybe he's not being challenged enough. That's the other side of the
Mm.
coin. So
He's just
hopefully we
getting
see
too
him next year.
bored and losing his focus because of boredom.
Like, yes, you're reading my mind. You know exactly what I'm saying. So hopefully next year we see him in the guest entrance slot in the Monaco Grand Prix.
Yeah, I think adding that in, we were saying that might just spice things up just a little bit, especially with that rubbing is racing kind of attitude coming from NASCAR and everything with Larson. But the Coca-Cola 600 was actually a pretty interesting race as well, just with how it shook out. Ross Chastain wins the Coca-Cola 600 after taking the lead in the last 10 or so laps after William Byron had led for 283 of the 400 laps or 300 laps or something like that.
Oh
Um,
wow.
so just was super, super dominant and then just got picked off right at the end by Chastain. So pretty tough way for that to end for Byron, but a very impressive run for him, and he had won the Daytona 500. So definitely uh, something that's in his wheelhouse of these like longer endurance, more focused races there in NASCAR. But yeah, tough way for that to shake out for Byron at the end there.
Yeah, but exciting to be in the hunt for for effectively the whole race, be able to get it done in the closing stages. That's gotta be so sweet to get it done after such a long haul. So yeah, it must have been just a fun battle to have. As much as it was a fun battle to watch.
Yeah, but a long day of motorsports that concluded there with the Coca-Cola 600. Looking into some new updates about the 2026 Formula One engine regulations. There's some more news that came out that sounds a little disconcerting in terms of teams being where they need to be or even want to be for the 2026 regulations. From this report, of the five manufacturers for next year, only one seems to really actually be in decent shape. There's apparently some issues with the fuel that some of the different teams are using and whatnot, because there's I believe an option to do biofuel as well as an option for synthetic fuel, and the biofuel seems to be pretty uncompetitive. And then another two of the power unit manufacturers just are kind of behind the game. So it seems like just a little bit all over the place in terms of where these manufacturers are and whether things will be ready to go for next year or not with the new engine regulations, or I guess what quality of racing we're gonna see with all of these changes.
I'm curious. Yes, ultimately I agree with you. I wonder if there is a bit of like a bottleneck going on because of the competition between the top teams in the Constructors' Championship. It must be tough to decide how you're divvying up your time and your resources to this year versus next year. How like ahead of the game are you trying to be? I understand this stuff has been like in the works for a while. I understand like these are long processes. But you get what I'm saying. Like how soon do you take your foot off the gas for 2025 and begin dedicating more and more resources to that project? Basically, what I'm
Yeah,
saying is, it feels like the closer we get to the end of the year, the more progress these teams are going to be able to make because they're able to like shift their resources into it. It's interesting to hear though that they are still having like such issues in getting that like exciting pace out of like what out of the materials that they're trying to work with, because that's the question, like how do we put on a good show?
yeah, and have competitive racing as well.
Right.
Because if these engine suppliers are so far off one another that whoever has the Mercedes engines is just the teams that have that dominate the points and everything, and those last couple points are whoever the next engine supplier is that's doing half decently. That's not going to make for the most exciting racing overall. Where I think, and I'd be interested to see kind of from your point about the shifting of focus, and like they already have this amount of prioritization that they're allowed to do with the engines and the new regulations and everything. But if they are able to shift more of their kind of engineering focus and everything, or more of their financial focus with the regulations and everything to that engine project for the regulations, and how that all shakes out. But it seems the closer that we get to next year, and the further we get into the season, the more that these I guess whispers or these issues with the engines are concerning in terms of the quality of racing for next year.
Sure, right, because we don't want, one person in in Alex Palou's Indy car and have the rest of the teams in, the slaw dog wiener cars, we don't want that.
Exactly. Yeah. If we can avoid that, even though weenie mobiles might be exciting to see at Monaco, I think they might have a tough time at the hairpin. We saw a number of people have a tough time at the hairpin through the F3 and F2 races as well. So that might just make it a little too tough for those weenie mobiles in Monaco. But yeah, you don't want to see things or the kind of competitive nature or competitive integrity of the series to go down the drain because they decided, oh, now it's time for the new engine regulations. So there's, I'm sure, going to be continued discussions about what they can do, talks with the FIA and Formula One to figure things out. Um, but we'll just keep our ear to the ground for any further updates, and if they make any adaptations or changes to the regulations to kind of promote that competitive racing for next year.
Yeah, because boo environment, woohoo racing.
Exactly. I mean, there are things that are worse for the environment than motorsport. There's only 20 of those cars going around in Formula 1, so I don't think that's the tipping point for global warming there. There I think there's a few other things that are probably impacting that a little bit more. But
Yeah, the idea that you like actually believe there's only 20 cars racing is like so funny. It's like there's only 20 cars.
yeah, there's just 20 cars. That's it.
That's
20
so
that matter. um But before we get into talking a bit more about Formula One and then the Monaco Grand Prix weekend, we just want to take this time to remind you that you guys can make a change by increasing our subscriber count and liking and following along with all of our content that we're putting out here with the Tyred Boys podcast. We really appreciate everyone taking the time to listen. So don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. Check us out on Twitter. Over on Twitch, we typically stream the episodes when we're recording as well. But our TikTok, we have some shorts that we're putting out. So keep an eye out for those, and we appreciate everyone following along.
Thank you for listening. Back to the show.
So getting into the Monaco weekend, we had Formula 3, Formula 2, and then the F1 race. So starting down in F3, we had kind of a interesting result, I guess, with some of the top drivers not ending up at the front of the grid with qualifying and everything that we've seen. But one of the other intriguing parts of the Formula 3 and Formula 2 weekend was that they split qualifying into two separate groups because of the number of cars that are there on the grid. So with Formula 3, I think there were 29 cars on the weekend that were in qualifying. And then for F2, I believe it was 24. So they split that up because the circuit just can't really. I mean, 20 cars on the grid in Formula One qualifying is tough to have out there with all the traffic and everything. So reducing the number of cars on track into that split qualifying session, I think, is a pretty ideal way to go ahead and do that for the Formula 3 grid.
Yeah, I think that seems fine. Honestly, just gives all the drivers a chance for at least room to put a fast lap in because we see there's people tripping out people tripping over each other pretty regularly around here. So yeah, I was happy to see them split the sessions.
Yeah, it just makes the most sense, especially with these drivers developing and everything. The last thing you need is just more chaos on the track. We had a number of impeding moments as is with the F3, F2, and then even in F1 practice sessions and everything. So definitely just makes the most sense to have a few less cars on track at a time. But with the sprint race, we had Stenshorn, who ended up taking the win there. Kamara and Tramins, who are towards the top of the standings, finished P7 and P5 respectively. So picking up a few points there in the sprint race to kind of keep on with the consistency that they're seeing. But Stenshorn went from pole to win the race. So similar to Formula One, very difficult to pass out there on the circuit. So getting that P1 starting position from for either the sprint race or the feature race is really massive, but there were a number of incidents, and it just kind of highlighted throughout the Formula 3 weekend that how tough this circuit is, especially for drivers who are still learning and still developing themselves and their skill sets. There were just a lot of breaking points I feel like that were just missed or breaking a little bit too late and creating contact with other cars. So definitely Monaco's a very tough circuit to be learning at. So I'm not shocked by the number of incidents, but it was definitely a tougher weekend on that side for Formula 2 and Formula 3.
Yeah, and especially with some of the chicanes, the way they're designed, you have like they're like hard left-handers or hard right-handers with like a traditional like a road barrier around the edges. So even like the smallest mistake, like the littlest bit of rubbing along them, we saw, especially in the Formula One sessions, we saw drivers being punished for like even the smallest amount of contact. So yeah, that's a good point. It's a tough track to kind of cut your teeth on in that regard. But yeah, I was pleased with like you had brought up specifically Kamara. You know, last time out had a good run over the weekend versus Ramos. So it was nice to see him coming out another decent performance as well. So yeah, definitely a driver to watch for me in that regard.
Yeah, and unfortunately for him in the feature race, he ends up DNFing due to a mechanical issue with his, and I think it was just from the pit stop. One of his tires didn't stay on, so whether the wheel nut wasn't fully secure at the end of the pit stop, and he went out, loses a wheel partway through a lap, and ends up DNFing there. There were a couple of like funky things like that as well. One of the other drivers' words um, had made contact and had a puncture in his tire, but just kind of kept going. He like went past the pit lane and tried to keep circulating on a punctured tire, and ended up hitting the wall like almost immediately after going past the pit lane and bringing out a safety car there. So some odd decision making, I guess, in terms of that for his team, but
Do you see do you think the drivers feel compelled to get the car back to the pits? Because we saw Gasly do the same thing and he got roasted for that too. Where, like, do you feel like there's some type of pressure that the driver senses to get their car off the track where they're like, oh, like, I don't want to hold up the session? Like, do you think that's entering their mind?
I think it probably is to some extent, but I
Huh.
think in this instance, whether it was a failure in communication or whatnot for words, he like he could have gone into the pit lane, and whether it was he was blocked off by another car coming through or what exactly, I didn't really see, or it was a little tough to tell, but for whatever reason, just goes past the pit entry and kind of continues on and then ends up hitting the wall shortly after, just on the side and going out of the race. So no serious damage to him or anything other than the car, but yeah, kind of a bizarre situation with that for him. And I think there has to be at least some pressure of like, if the car's still carrying on forward, then might as well. But with Gasly, for instance, I was concerned about that front right tire like coming, or front left, whichever one it was, coming off entirely, and potentially causing an even larger issue if that front right comes off, or there's additional debris from um, carrying on after an incident.
Yeah, because often the drivers just seem so ready to just pull off the track, and just stop the car, turn the car off, let the stewards handle it, in like a runoff or whatever it is. But yeah, this track specifically, there's often these moments of them kind of limping their car back and being penalized for it to whatever degree. So yeah, that's interesting that the drivers would feel responsible in that regard. But yeah, overall, just like you were saying, just a couple of wonky things coming out of the F3 race in there.
Yeah, and the other just big highlight from F3 and something to kind of keep an eye out for is Nicholas Solov, who had been in F3 last year, had 2 race wins, I believe, last year. Wins the feature race here. It's his 5th win in Formula 3 now, which has is a record, I believe, from what they were saying in terms of number of race wins in the series for an individual driver. And then we had Belinsky P2 and Boya P3, but that win with the pole position and fastest lap point for Solov picks him up 28 points in the feature race and kind of catapulted him. He has 61 points total, so almost half of his points total in this one race to bring him up into P3 in the standings, jumping like halfway up the grid here with one weekend. So pretty massive for him, especially alongside Kamara and P1, who didn't get any points in the feature race, and then Stromstead, who was running in P3, or actually I think Stromstead was P2 before this weekend. Didn't pick up any points on the race weekend, so a massive swing in that championship fight in Nicholas Solov's favor.
Solov better be careful, man. If he keeps doing well, he's gonna get that crooked hand of Helmet Marco on his shoulder, saying, "Come up and race for us, brother."
Yeah, I mean
Just have his
he
career ruined.
might creep his way up the ladder there in terms of looking at the driver options for the upcoming years, especially if there are any changes with the Racing Bulls seats there. But moving over into Formula 2, the sprint race had a little bit of chaos as well initially. Arvid Lindblad went into Jack Crawford's side pod and ends up getting a 10-second penalty, but was in P3 in position in the sprint race. So kind of a bizarre scenario for Lindblad and his team where he goes ahead and his team is instructing him to like build a 12-second gap and just hold everyone off behind him so that at the last few laps he can just go and try and tear off and make up this 10-second penalty, which ends up working out decently well. He ends up finishing P8 after the 10-second penalty, which in Monaco is pretty impressive with how tight those DRS trains and everything can be. So manages to make that work, but a kind of, I guess, eye-opening start to the weekend before we got into the Formula One race when it comes to that strategy and the ability for these cars to kind of hold up the cars behind them.
Yeah, it's a tough place to be where not racing is the best racing strategy to do.
Yeah, it's disappointing because and we heard the Williams drivers. We'll talk about them a little bit later, but yeah, it's not the most fun. And for something like Monaco, where it is kind of one of those races on the calendar that everyone would love to win, it makes it really tough to see things be kind of boring or not as competitive as you would like to see. Um, but in that sprint race, Kush Maini holds off the entire way from pole, holds off Gabriele Mini, who is right on his tail for the entirety of the race, including through safety car restarts and everything, holds him off to take that win. And then Lucas Browning was promoted to P3 with Lindblad's penalty and gets his 5th podium of the year. So just some impressive consistency from Browning. as we've gone through the year. And again, just kind of a tough position for him with being a Williams Jr. driver, where there's not really anywhere for him to necessarily go, unfortunately, to be promoted, even though he's currently having just a mega season. He's leading in the championship now after the Monaco weekend, but just not as many opportunities open in front of him for an immediate seat in Formula One.
Yeah, and it's that like odd case of success in your main series, but like just doors being closed kind of ahead of you. You hope that the team that he's racing for can, open up opportunities in other series, maybe give him some, give him another drive in a favorable series, something like this. But yeah, to your point, it's looking like upward mobility would be limited for him.
Yeah, at least right now with the Williams seats seemingly locked up with Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz there. But moving over to the feature race, this was kind of one of the biggest turning points I think for the weekend, and part of Lucas Browning getting that lead in the championship. But we have Alex Dunn take pole position in the feature race. Goes out and just doesn't get a good start off the line, and ends up just knocking right into Victor Martins at turn one. And unfortunately, hi Sana, you're back. And at turn one, crashes out in front of the entire grid basically, and draws the red flag, but knocks out 7 different drivers in the mayhem there. So Alex Dunn, Victor Martins, who was in P2 and got the good start off the line ahead of him, Richard Verschoor, Gabriella Mini, Ritomo Miata, Pepe Marti, and Max Esterson all knocked out before the first turn of the race due to this big, just massive pile up that we had in the Formula 2 race. And it was one of those instances, and we've seen it with Formula One drivers, Formula Two driver. You see this where a driver doesn't get a good start and they get a little bit desperate into turn one, and there's contact. Like he could have given up the position and been like, "Man, I got beat out at the start. I'm gonna just slot into P2 here and just break a little bit early and go," and that would have been perfectly fine. But instead, we have this massive incident. I think it was the Porsche Cup or one of the other series that was there this weekend had a similar pile up very early on going up the hill after turn one. So it's not an easy circuit to dodge out of these incidents, but we had a few of the drivers make it through and kind of reposition themselves for that red flag restart after the chaos there.
Yeah, that turn one's really tricky because like on the right hand side you have the exit of the pit lane as well. So like what looks like open space to the right, it's actually not open space. Like you're not like technically allowed to go there. You could likely incur a penalty if you're going off the track like that. Obviously, there's like turn one forgiveness and whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of the tougher turn ones. Short run down to it, limited room like in the actual turn, and then it just bottlenecks like going up the hill as well. So yeah, just a really really tough turn one. And unfortunate for Alex Dunn, somebody who is quite competitive, removes himself from the points earning for the weekend. Him and all the other drivers he took out with him too.
Yeah, and so definitely not the way you want it to go, especially leading the championship. And I think that's a one of those learning moments, hindsight's 2020 of like, man, I'm now not leading the championship because I made that mistake where if I had slotted into P2 and just had said, "Oh man, I got beat," then he would be coming away with a lot more points here, potentially, and potentially be still leading the championship after this weekend. But for the rest of the race, it ends up being just a fortunate or fortune fell into Fornaroli's lap there, with a safety car late where he's in P4, or sorry, fell into Jack Crawford's lap to take away the lead from Fornaroli. Fornaroli in the top three with Jack Crawford in fourth get a safety car just after they had passed the pit entry, and Jack Crawford gets in there on the first loop around behind the safety car, and because of getting in there first, ends up making it out of the pits and everything after the three stop up their next time around in P1, and just kind of leapfrogs them because of the safety car, and just the timing of that. So very fortunate for Jack Crawford, but unfortunate for Fornaroli, who had made it through that turn one incident and had looked really strong throughout the rest of the race, from the restart kind of up until that point.
Yeah, that's really exciting, making the worst of a or the best of a bad situation. Obviously the race continues even after something like that. So yeah, exciting end to the race, and able to get himself into a solid points paying position. Yeah, it's one of those races where the adage kind of rings a little bit truer, where they say you can't win a race on turn one, but you can for sure lose it. This is like one of those examples of it. So yeah, tough to see there, but they'll be able to bounce back next time out, I'm sure.
Yeah, and the only real benefit from that, I guess, incident for those drivers that didn't finish was because of the red flag and the timing and everything. It ended up being half points being awarded because there weren't
Mhm.
enough laps being run for the feature race there. So instead of Crawford getting a full 25 points plus the fastest lap, he comes away with 13 points. So not ideal for those guys who did finish, but it definitely panned out a little bit better for Alex Dunn, and to not drop too far in the standings there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think maybe overall a bit of a weekend to forget for some of the younger drivers here. Because yeah, after all, tough circuit, bad things can lead to worse circumstances. So yeah, I'm guessing everybody will just be looking forward to the next race.
Yeah, so that wraps up the Formula 2 weekend. And before we get into the Formula 1 weekend, we have another episode of the hot seat here for you with the Monaco Grand Prix.
All right, so for everyone playing at home, we got five multiple choice questions surrounding the Monaco Grand Prix and kind of the history of the event. I think I've got a pretty good one here for you. A couple of, maybe freebies, some fan favorites. So we'll see how you do. Aaron, you ready to get into the hot seat here?
Yep, let's get going.
All right, here we go. So, question number one. In the 60s, the race was dominated by a single driver. He was dubbed Mr. Monaco, securing 5 wins here at the track. Who was said racer? Is it A, Graham Hill, B, Jackie Stewart, or C, Jack Brabham?
Ooh, I'm gonna go with Jackie Stewart.
Jackie Stewart is incorrect, sir. It is
Is it Brabham?
Graham Hill.
Oh, it's Graham
No,
Hill. Oh, I was going between the other two, so okay. Good for Graham Hill.
quite impressive dominance over the years. Now, question two, another era of dominance we'll talk about. This is in the 80s. So in a 10-year spread, there were only two drivers to win the Monaco event across 84 to 93. Which rivalry was Monaco a battleground for? Was it A, Mansell and Beloff? Was it B, Prost and Senna, or was it C, Berger and PK?
B, Prost and Senna.
Nailed it. Senna becoming one of the winningest drivers here at Monaco, having 6 Grand Prix victories, 5 of which coming right in a row. Between that rivalry, Prost and Senna, hey. Senna definitely coming out on top in that regard. So a fun era to watch the Monaco Grand Prix in. Now, question number 3. The Monaco Grand Prix is quite the motorsport spectacle, rivaling that of the IndyCar 500 and the 24 Hours of Le Mans. To win all 3 would be a feat. What is the name of this achievement that is only held by one driver? Is it A, the Triple Crown? Is it B, the Triple Threat? Or C, Top Gear?
The Triple Crown.
You got it. And the aforementioned Graham Hill is the only driver to win
How
the Triple Crown, have a victory in all 3 races.
how many
Current,
how many Monaco Grand Prix did Graham Hill win?
I believe, I believe he was 5. I think it was
Oh
5
wow.
total. Yeah,
That's
yeah. Significant.
impressive. Yeah.
I believe it's Fernando Alonso and Montoya that are currently like could win the Triple Crown. Like they each have
Mm,
2 of the 3 events. So that'd
gotcha.
be that'd be interesting to see in our lifetime. So that was correct, sir. Now, question number 4 coming right at you. This is a circuit dominated by very few constructors, with everybody else lagging behind. Which team has the most wins here? Is it A, Mercedes? Is it B, Ferrari? Or is it C, McLaren?
B Ferrari.
Wrong, sir. In
Oh.
an era dominated by Prost and Senna, both of which race for McLaren, you're going to guess Ferrari.
I was thinking that Senna would have been in a Ferrari. So yeah, that was
Okay.
my
Okay,
mistake
fair.
there with the timing. But yeah, that makes
No
sense.
worries. No worries. All right. Question number 5. Let's see if we can end strong here. So this monumental event, the Monaco Grand Prix, was featured in a golden screen classic superhero film. Which movie featured the hero driving in the Monaco Grand Prix itself? Was it A, The Incredible Hulk? Was it B, Doctor Strange? Or was it C, the second Iron Man film?
C Iron Man 2 or the second Iron Man film. I don't know if
You
it's
nailed
Iron
it.
Man 2.
And if you've been watching for a long time, you would know that this is our favorite piece of lore here for the Monaco Grand Prix is that it was driven by A1 Tony Stark.
Yes.
So actually no, 3 out of 5 seem to be just a pretty C average student here. 3 out of 5 seems to be what we can get. All good. We're gonna try again next event. I think that was a pretty good one. I think
Yeah.
we were able to include a little bit of history here, a little bit of goofs and gaffs. But Aaron, I'm gonna need to see some more studying out of you, honestly.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to put my head down, nose in the book a little bit to get prepared for the upcoming and with the upcoming race with the Barcelona Grand Prix. So I'll have to be a little bit more ready for that one. But
There you
that
go.
that does wrap out the hot seat here. So I hope you guys did a little bit better than me. Hopefully not too much better because that would just make me feel a little bit embarrassed, but but always a fun part of the episode.
Very good, very good. Now we've got some of our teams and drivers that we want to give a tip of the hat or a wag of the finger to. We've got our winners and losers here for the weekend. So Aaron, I know you had your teams under the microscope here over the weekend. So tell me who your winners were.
Yeah, so I did primarily have teams here for the winners and losers. My first winner though was Racing Bulls, and it kind of starts out. It's obviously they created some of the less exciting racing here on the weekend for the Grand Prix, but in terms of their performance and just being able to put themselves in a good position for points with the two stop mandatory two stop strategy there. Um, their qualifying really just benefited them massively. Isaac Hadjar being up in P6 for qualifying, and then Liam Lawson in P9. It set them up to be able to have this kind of uh, game that they could play with the second driver being close by. Liam Lawson's able to back up the entire field essentially to give Isaac Hadjar two free pit stops before most people had even done their first. That strategy decision then kind of pays itself back because Williams is forced into the position of having to do a similar stunt, and Liam Lawson gets two free pit stops. So a double points finish for the Racing Bulls here in Monaco, with Isaac Hadjar finishing P6, Liam Lawson P8. So a 12-point pickup for them on the weekend, and kind of propelling themselves forward in that constructors fight.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's a great pick. They were my first winner as well. You were talking about the kind of the nuts and bolts of it. The feels side of that story is just how surprising it is to see that type of a result, where you normally think of oh no, Red Bull is the main team. They're the sister team. How could they ever be ahead of them? But here they are having two cars outperforming the one of the parent team in that regard. So just like the eye test of the weekend, it's like, wait, what is going on here? Like these drivers are actually good. Like, is the car actually good? It was like an eye opening performance for the Racing Bulls, and I think if for some reason you were looking for reasons to follow this team, I think this is one of them. Are they able to do this just because of a good strategy call, or do you think there's a little bit something in the tank here for the Racing Bulls? I think either way, it was an exciting weekend for them to be sure.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things is that Liam Lawson had a really solid qualifying performance. We've seen Hadjar be consistently doing well, but Lawson ends up having a really good finish here in the qualify, or good qualifying performance that puts him in that position to have a good finish. And that's what we've kind of been waiting to see from him, to see if he's able to uh, bring that pace that he's shown these like brief glimpses of, um, and some more consistency to bring himself up there into the points a little more frequently. It's his first points on the season for Lawson.
Big time agree. Big time agree. It was nice to see him having a good performance where you just feel like he's been maybe on the back foot. Maybe you could use a more maybe a little bit more of an aggressive phrase if you'd like. But on the back foot wouldn't be a disservice to say. So yeah, seeing especially a good performance from him is very encouraging. So yeah, I think Racing Bulls had a really solid Monaco Grand Prix. Obviously able to scoop up some points, and that's gonna feel and look really good for them. I'll tell you who else was a winner here on the weekend. And by golly, he just makes me laugh all the time. To the degree that I'm giving him a full slot on our winners, Zach Brown. He was so funny after the race. He was like down, like on the grid where they're like doing all the, interviews and sign the tire and smile over here and all this. He has like both of his drivers walk by, both Norris and Piastri, and he just lets out the funniest villain laugh ever. He was just like, ha 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 ha, as his like winning drivers are just walking by. I'm like, this guy fucking rules. He just like he wins with his whole soul, and
He
that just felt
does.
so good. You get the clip of him like coming from like upstairs in the hospitality, in whatever like the president's booth is. He's like running down the stairs, and he just gives like the old yeah into the thing, and then just like scurries down the steps, like just the most wholesome winning individual. I love to see Zach Brown win, because he was and is fully behind his drivers every time they're performing well. And I kind of love to see it. That
Yeah,
that laugh like stuck with me all day. So I was like, this guy, I'm giving him some flowers here.
absolutely. I mean, looking at the energy that he puts and the excitement that he has for the Formula One and his other the racing teams with McLaren and everything, there's just you can see the passion he has for racing and for um, them being so successful over the past 2 seasons here with him at the helm. Like that has to just it just boils over in him when you see him after a win. So definitely a good one for your second winner, and of course he is there with Lando winning the race, so winning constructor as well. But and bolstering that McLaren lead, I guess, in the all-time wins for Monaco. So just I should have guessed that just because Lando's tacking on extra ones here. Um,
Yeah, exactly. The proof was all in the pudding.
Yeah, but looking at my second winner, I had the Ferraris. It started out being a kind of unassuming weekend. Charles Leclerc was very despondent before the weekend, just not really having any high expectations for the race weekend. But through qualifying and everything, he goes up, almost takes pole position, ends up P2 by I think it was a tenth of a second or something like that behind Lando Norris, who had set the lap record for Monaco. So nothing to be disappointed about for Leclerc in terms of his pace. I don't think there was much more he could have done. Lewis Hamilton, similarly a P4 qualifying, unfortunately gets the 3 place grid drop for impeding Max Verstappen during the session, but a really unexpected weekend, I think, for the Ferraris. And when you have Yuki Tsunoda not finishing in the points, you have both of the Mercedes not finishing in the points. That was just a big swing for Ferraris getting the P2 with Charles, and then the I think it was P4 with Lewis or P5. Um, P5 finish with Lewis, so scooping up 28 points there in the constructors standings. They're now 1 point behind Red Bull for P3 and only 5 points behind Mercedes for P2. So an extremely tight pack there for that second place constructors position. And so this is just a mega weekend for the Ferraris to come out with that many points and a solid performance when they weren't really anticipating it.
Yeah, and like think of the point swing that we have here too, because this is a weekend where Russell really struggled, Antonelli struggles. So the offset where like Mercedes is not picking up any points, Ferrari's able to improve on their position as well. So yeah, I would agree. I think the maybe unexpectedness really helps and brings them right into the fight with these other top teams as well. So I think that's got to feel really good for Ferrari. So yeah, I would definitely agree with that one.
And kind of to carry on with that into the losers section here, talking about the Mercedes cars and how they just didn't have a great weekend. That was my first loser of the week. Really tough in qualifying. Kimi Antonelli crashes, and then George Russell has a mechanical issue with the car, an electronic issue with the car, whatever it was that he is unable to finish the qualifying session. They're starting out in P14 and P15 on the grid. So, really on the back foot from the get go from those issues there. And with the way the race goes, with the strategies, Lawson backing people up, inability to pass and everything, they are just trapped kind of out of the points for the entire race. The only attempt that they make is to just cut the chicane at swimming pool to try and get past and say, hey, we'll take the penalty and hopefully this pays off. But unfortunately, at that point, it was a little too late for the Mercedes cars to get back up into the points, and just super tough when you really can't pass around Monaco.
Yeah, where drivers are feeling like they have to resort to like effectively illegal maneuvers to just like continue their own race. And we understand from a strategy standpoint that the reason you are not pushing as hard is to open up windows to have a reasonable pit stop. So when you go in, you don't come back out into what the teams would like call like an unraceable scenario where they can no longer progress forward. So you have teams trying to manage these gaps and openings to get themselves either a good pit stop or in other scenarios like prevent a good one or whatever, like set up a teammate or something.
Yeah.
So what seems to be quite a fun strategic battle between the pit walls of these teams trying to gain advantages, it doesn't end up looking so exciting from our perspective. And then you get these weird feel bads, both for the driver and then the viewers, where you just have racers just like cutting chicanes and being like, sorry, guy. It's like,
Yeah.
oh man, well, that's not cool. So yeah, tough one for Mercedes where they feel put in that position.
Yeah, and it's just not ideal, and we'll get into it a little bit more. But yeah, that's not what you're looking for, especially for what's supposed to be one of the um, most important races for in terms of drivers' feelings for to win on the calendar. You don't want the racing to just be kind of a messy clown show a little bit, or a little bit of a circus there. So yeah, definitely tougher for the Mercedes team being my first loser on the weekend.
Yeah, and that kind of goes hand in hand with my first one as well. Like it's a bit of a stretch, but you'll understand what I mean. Where my first loser, I think, was the FIA. The strategies that they used to hopefully make a more exciting weekend didn't really pay off. They tried something, they had an idea, they put it into practice. I love that. Honestly, I
Mm-hmm.
do. I love it. I love that they looked forward to making value forward changes. I think that's very encouraging. Maybe it didn't work out how they wanted to. Maybe the racing like wasn't that exciting. It encouraged this like weird strategy like we had talked about earlier of not racing. I'm sure that's not what they wanted, obviously. That's just like given the rule set, that's just what the teams are going to do. Like that's how it seems like was the best way to min-max that scenario. So yeah, just moving forward, hopefully there'll be other ways that they can maybe tweak the program or improve it. But here's something I will say that's like the other side of that coin where I'm getting like giving the FIA a little bit of grace. The jeopardy was not taken out, or not the jeopardy, the excitement was not taken out of the qualifying session. And if
No, yeah,
anything, knowing what Sunday is going to look like, it makes qualifying all the more tantalizing, dude. That second run that McLaren was able to do because of their like
mm-hmm.
position on track, they were able to do the second run when nobody else could. It's like, oh yes, that's fucking great.
Yeah,
Like that's the strategy call that everybody's like, oh McLaren, like, oh you're just sleeping on the pit wall. No, they saw a scenario, they saw a gap, and they went for it. They shot it. They knew their tires could do it again. They improved on the lap. Like that was the most exciting qualifying. Not the I don't want to be hyperbolic, but that was quite an exciting qualifying session between those top drivers. The margins were so tight. They were coming so close to the swimming pool chicane corners. Like that was a very exciting qualifying session.
yeah,
So we are in a position where it's like, all right, we just small tweaks, small tweaks. I like the change of the double mandated pit stop. Didn't work out how they wanted to, but like this whole weekend was not foregone and shot and like get rid of the thing. There is still, now here's where I want to use the word, there is still jeopardy on the track that makes it very, very exciting.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I would say. While yes, I am saying the FIA are my losers, just because they get so much flack. Everybody thinks they're like a format expert now. Everybody thinks they know how to solve the race, and everybody just points at the FIA and is like, "Boo you!" But it's like, all right, I'm going to come from the side and say at least they tried something. The qualifying session is still epic. The scenes are still amazing, and the
Yeah.
storylines are wonderful. So I'm taking it with a grain of salt. I understand it's not the race that they wanted to have, but yeah, it was a decent step forward.
Yeah, and I think I'll I want to get into it a little bit more after we wrap out the winners and losers, but I think overall, like, yeah, it was, they lost because it didn't work out. Like, but if they, it's one of those situations where if you do nothing and it's the same old and everyone's like, they should have tried something. At least, yeah, they did give it a shot. It didn't pan out. It kind of created some of these wonky situations and everything with the strategies, but they did try. So I can't fault them for that there with the decision making. I would say that next year I don't anticipate it being a mandated two stop race again. I think they'll probably have to look at some other alternatives. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on that, but before we get there, my second loser for this weekend was Fernando Alonso, who just seems to have the worst luck of anyone out there. I don't know if he broke a mirror or walked under a ladder as he was going to get an espresso the other morning, or what it was. A black cat went across his path, but in a position where he qualifies in P7. He's starting P6 in the race with Lewis Hamilton's penalty, and is up there in the points, looking on for a solid points finish. Just ends up DNFing and just not making it through the race, having another issue, and just a tough way for things to shake out after making it just about halfway through. For him to go out that way is just disappointing, and I can imagine just extremely frustrating for him.
Yeah, there's no way this is what he wants, no way what Aston Martin wants. So yeah, just a really tough check-in every time you're looking towards that, every time you're looking towards the Aston Martin camp. So yeah, tough there for Alonso, and it's not just this weekend. Like there's the string of it too. So it's this compounding pressure. Nothing is ever gonna go right.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're all just rooting for Fernando Alonso to catch a break, honestly.
Yeah, I'm right there, just hoping that one of these times that either the car or situation just pans out in his favor. But thus far, no such luck for Alonso this year.
Yeah, and I think just like we had talked about for a couple of the other teams, a couple of the other drivers, yeah, it just seems like a tough circuit, a tough Sunday to run. Either you're dealing with, overheating issues, being stuck behind people, you're in a position where you're never going to progress, or you're effectively just like in a DRS parade. So yeah, a bunch of maybe not the funnest racing for the drivers, but I think we had a decent weekend overall. Like I said, I think the qualifying session is still amazing. So yeah, couple unfortunate losers in that regard, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's where I wanted to go next with this for the Monaco Grand Prix, because obviously this didn't work out with the FIA's decision to do the mandated two stop. I initially was like, oh, this could be so great. Like, whoever's in P20 like could pit on the first 2 laps and get their pit stops out of the way, and then they can just make their way back up the field, and maybe there will be a safety car that lets them hop a few places up. And I was expecting some strategy a little bit more from the back of the field, but just due to those teammates being near each other, playing and kind of being forced into the team game a little bit, they it just didn't pan out to be that exciting overall. We had Kimi Antonelli, who is the first driver to be 3 laps or to get lapped 3 times in a race since Nikita Mazepin a few years back. So a really like, and I wanted to look into it but couldn't find the data. But I'm curious, like, in terms of the later finishers, I guess, like, what how long this Monaco Grand Prix time wise was in comparison to other ones, because we had a couple of safety car VSCs, safety cars, and everything coming out, and with the pace and how slow the back of the field was going, like they were going seconds per lap slower than the front runners who were competing and trying to find their own gaps to be able um to pit and get their pit stops in. I mean, we saw Max Verstappen go until the second to last lap before he took his second mandatory pit stop and all, and is able to stay ahead of Lewis because Lewis is just getting caught up during with all these back markers who are going just terribly slow, and loses. I think he lost like 12 seconds in a few laps to Max, just trying to pick his way through all the traffic out there on the circuit. And giving Max the ability to just go, hey, I'm going to run it as long as I can. Hopefully, there's a red flag. I get a free tire change and I get to take the win. But if not, then I'll still finish P4, kind of where I anticipated. Um, but with qualifying being so exciting, being so important, um, where do you think, I guess, Monaco belongs in terms of being on this? We see all these circuits who are potentially losing their being on the calendar in coming years and everything. Monaco's obviously one that you don't want to lose. It has so much history and all, but with the current cars, their sizes and everything, I just don't know if there's that much you can do in terms of the race to make it more competitive. But at the same time, like you said, Monaco's kind of been like this for a long time. It's not a circuit that's ever lent itself to tons of overtaking and crazy situations and all. So that qualifying always being so important is still like a huge exciting part of that weekend. Even as long as we've been watching, we were like, yeah, I got to make sure I'm watching qualifying because qualifying is more important than the race this weekend. And I feel like that's just kind of it's okay to be a one off, but I don't know if you had any other thoughts or ideas about how they could potentially maybe make this a bit more exciting overall, or create more opportunities for drivers to um, overtake, or to shake things up, or just make it more competitive where we're not having drivers driving off the pace intentionally, and not allowing cars by.
Yeah, it's interesting as you're talking about this, a bunch of different ideas like float into my mind. So like if you really lean into the idea that like okay, the location that we have to work with doesn't encourage the best racing. Okay, Do we want this still on the calendar? Overwhelmingly, yes, though. It's like
Right.
weird. Okay. So there's this like nostalgia sentiment, but bad racing. Okay. All right, let's look at the weekend. Like, what does work? Okay, the qualifying session. What factors into a qualifying session? Well, each of the drivers have more room on the track if they have air in front of them. The jeopardy is created by how fast each of them can like complete one lap. Like the track is exciting where like one lap is like fun to watch. So, what if you really lean into the idea that it's like, okay, what if we just don't consider that this is a race weekend? What if we take an idea from the IndyCar calendar and say it's like, or like what Formula One used to do, where it's like a non-championship event. They could slice that any amount of ways that they wanted to. You could offer like half points, but do a two heat Sunday where it's like like randomized to where you have like five drivers from the top of the grid, five drivers from the bottom of the grid in each of the heats, and then you just run like two heat races on a Sunday. You like have to slot out more time, but again, if we're gonna think of it as a one-off anyway, right? So you could do that. You could do like a sprint race on Saturday, just chop the weekend up, say, fuck it, we're going to make it a sprint weekend. So you put a race on Saturday, and then you do like a hill climb one shot event on on the Sunday where instead of like a race, you do it like the IndyCar qualifying where you just try and get as many laps as you can and whoever is fastest at the end gets those 25 points. So like there's
Okay.
any amount of different events that you could do, but I think it starts with dispensing with the idea that it has to be like a race or that has to be a race with like everybody like on the track at the same time. I think there would be ways that are still fun and competitive or that are still fun to watch, are competitive for the drivers, but also rethinks and maybe like brings it into at least a more modern idea of what the Monaco Grand Prix could be because it has elements of a good weekend, but if the Sunday race isn't there, it's like that's what you really have to look at. So like these are just a couple of the
Yeah.
ideas that like came into my head now. But it's stuff like this that I think you would have to begin thinking about is like can we make it more of a spectacle and less of a race because it's not a race anyway and it hasn't been.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that had crossed my mind to some extent of keeping it as part of the calendar, but having it as almost like a all-star weekend compared to other sports where it doesn't have an effect on the championship standings, but at the same time, it's still something that everyone wants to win and everyone cares about. It's a historical thing. It's like winning Monaco is still a great accomplishment. So I don't know about maybe multiple races from my perspective, but maybe having it be a one-off weekend where it's not paying points to the championship, then maybe that could be a potential option there. But even looking at like qualifying, next year we're going to have 22 cars. We're seeing the F2 grid for 22 cars. You're splitting up the qualifying into two sessions. Maybe you have 11 cars, one car from each team who's in each of these qualifying sessions. You get to pick like, oh, like Yuki's going to be in the first qualifying session and Max is in the second, because then the track's going to be a little bit more rubbered in, and that creates a little bit of potentially separation because of where the track paces and everything for that qualifying. But just the thought of we already, it's very tight on the circuit. So 22 cars on this circuit for qualifying is going to be even tougher. Maybe that's the change that you make for next year, where it creates this even more kind of exciting. You see the drivers like going through, and at least in Q1, in two separate groups for that Q2 qualifying, or however they want to lay it out, to kind of expand on the qualifying session. You get a longer qualifying for the fans and everything. That's like this exciting thing. Um, and maybe that's the way, is you just add more excitement on the qualifying by kind of creating a bigger spectacle of it, and say, hey, the race, it is what it is. We love Monaco. It's been a part of the calendar from the get-go, and so it's just that qualifying is important, so let's make that as exciting as we possibly can.
That's a really good point. So, like, you're even bringing up something that if you were paying close attention the last couple of years, like they even have been doing this already. Like in this year's qualifying session, we had multiple breakdowns of the like Norris v Verstappen laps or whatever it was, like Leclerc v Verstappen laps. Normally, you don't get those in a qualifying session. Normally, they just have the regular commentators, they go to the breaks, they show the garages, and then they just keep it rolling. But you notice they spent a little more time, they give a little more production value, they spent more time in between each sessions, like talking about the individual laps, because they understand, like, well, this is the stuff that's like really gonna be separating the hairs, right?
Yeah.
Another thing is have other races on the calendar that encourage or support the qualifying just as much. Where it was earlier this year we were talking about it, where it's like maybe the narrative has to change for this circuit, where it's like the qualifying is important. Can you build a couple of narratives around some tracks where now Monaco isn't just a one-off? It's there's it is a speed bump along the long season, where these are races where qualifying is super important, and they like begin billing that as like an exciting reason to watch. I think these are all ways that you can begin to like smooth the idea of like Monaco being such a headache for us Formula One lovers. I love the sport, but I hate Monaco.
Yeah, and I mean, another thought that just popped into my mind, with to if you want to create or make the race more exciting, like the goal of this two-stop strategy was to guarantee that there was no red flag situation, that everyone just switches tires under red flag and you're in that. Like, maybe you could have a one-off rule that's agreed upon by the teams for Monaco, so not Monaco being a one off, but this rule being a one off, where you have to have one racing pit stop during the race. So, not necessarily like one tire change, and a under red flag changing your tires counts as the pit stop, but then this is like you do have to pit under racing conditions during the race onto a different or maybe not even a different tire. Maybe there is a red flag and you've changed from the mediums to the hards in that situation, and you're like, I did my tire change already, but you still have to do one racing pit stop to bring the team aspect. I don't know. Like,
I
I'm
mean,
sure
that's
there's,
a good idea. In
because I
all
mean
the ideas
this
that we've said, that's like a fine one. Yeah, that seems
yeah,
reasonable.
because I think that avoids, like, last year everyone's like, oh, it was so boring, nothing happened, because they just got to change the tires and just milk them to the end of the race.
Right.
Like, in this situation, you're just like, well, if that happens, which very easily could, we saw turn one incident in the F2 race and everything. We saw Kimi Antonelli and Gabriele Bortoleto get into it on the first lap. Like, you're guaranteeing that that specific situation doesn't happen. So I don't know. I think there's options out there, but I'm intrigued to see what they do because, just like you said during the losers, unfortunately they tried something, it didn't work. So back to the drawing board, and hopefully they can figure out a way to keep Monaco and keep it exciting for as much as possible for both qualifying and the race.
Yeah, and it's clear that that intent is coming from the FIA as well. It seems like they're putting a lot of resources into trying to make it a fun race, which means like they're hearing people's concerns. They're like, hey, yeah, we're trying to make it better. So like I said, that's like kind of encouraging. But yeah, overall, like I said, I still had wicked fun
Oh yeah.
during qualifying session. So yeah, in that regard, I was yeah, I was pleased, but I do appreciate having this conversation of just, you know, brainstorming some ideas of what other possible Formula One weekends that, you know, it could be, or what it could look like. Because yeah, things will have to adapt and change if you don't want, you know, 75 Las Vegases on your calendar.
Yeah, you want to keep some of this history, but you want to find ways to make it relevant, or keep it um, with the same atmosphere and value that you feel with other race weekends.
Of
Um,
course.
but just some kind of last highlights for different teams. One shout out that I wanted to give was to Esteban Ocon, who had a great qualifying performance in the Haas, starting up in the top 10, making it to Q3 and starting in P8 there. Just has a really fortunate situation with Liam Lawson holding everyone up behind him. He gets the free stops with Isaac Hadjar as well, and ends up bringing home some really important points for the Haas team with the P7 finish. So big shout out to Ocon for just making it that deep in qualifying and setting himself up for success there. It just panned out really well. So wanted to give him a shout out.
Yeah, I think that's a fine you know, fine pickup there as far as like stories that we didn't really cover. Yeah, thinking of the race, I feel like we hit like all the main points from my end that I wanted to cover. Um, Thinking back, I'm not sure I had any other real notes that I wanted to hit.
Yeah, I think that was because the only other thing that I had was just both Williams drivers were pretty vocal about their opinions about how the two-stop strategy went during the race, but we've
Mhm.
kind of already gotten through all of that where I don't feel like we need to get back into the weeds with it. But obviously, even on the driver's side and the team side, I know Toto was not thrilled with the situation that they were put in behind the Williams cars either. So just unfortunate circumstance of giving something a shot, but that is why qualifying is so important. And the Mercedes cars just weren't. You can't pick your way through the field like you can at other circuits. So a tough weekend for them. But yeah, I think that pretty much wraps out the Monaco Grand Prix recap. Unless there's any last tidbits that pop to mind.
No, I was just gonna make a Mario Kart joke, but you know, I'll just leave that. I'm
Don't
excited to
worry,
get into
Max
the
already did that.
yeah, there you go. I'm excited to get into the cooldown lap here. Talk about our flavor of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. If you, I'll go ahead and kick it off. But for my food, Colleen and I met up with her cousin and his wife last night for dinner. So we had some good Italian food here at a local spot, the Olive Garden. No, it wasn't Olive Garden, but at a nice little Italian spot here nearby. I had spicy vodka crab pasta, which was just it was phenomenal. The food and everything was Justin's head and hands over my Olive Garden.
Dude, that's so funny. Can you
uh,
imagine, like, if somebody legitimately didn't know that they were all over the place, and he was just saying to somebody, like, "Oh yeah, it's just a little neighborhood spot.
just a
We
little
love going. It's called the
local,
Olive Garden,"
little
and like
hole in the
nobody ever
wall.
tells. Yeah, yeah. It's like, dude, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
That's
and
so
and they
funny.
don't have the best Italian food out there, but I had some pretty good food last night. My music this week, I've been kind of working on songs and slowly adding them to. We have a couple playlists for the Outer Banks vacation that I'm going to be going on in a couple weeks, and so that has been nice to like take some of the music that I've been listening to or that I have in my different playlists from over the years and just infusing them based on the vibe and everything, like a little beach vibes playlist, a little music at the house playlist, and whatnot. So that's been fun to, and anyone who's listening, I have more songs to add. Don't worry, I'm not done. I haven't put too many in there yet, but I've been kind of picking through and adding things as I find ones that I think are a good fit. But um, my visual medium, though, for this week, I think is one of the more interesting ones that I've had recently, just with Colleen and I watched a show called Four Seasons, which is, I have to confirm what show, or it is on Netflix. I wanted to just make sure, but uh, Four Seasons on Netflix. It's just one season, like limited series, about three couples who have known each other for a long time. And kind of they go on vacation with each other once each season of the year, and get together. And so it kind of goes into their lives and like what's changing for each couple in between seasons of their vacations and all. But the interesting part was that Colleen found that this was a remake of sorts to a movie from the 1980s, which we got to compare. We watched the series and then we went back and watched the movie. And the movie, I'll say, is not phenomenal in terms of the
Okay.
quality and the acting and everything, but it was still fun to kind of look at the comparisons between that time and everything in terms of like where are they going on vacation, what are they doing, like how did they make these themes or little moments from the movie, how did they do them then in the series, with
Mm.
it being a remake and all. And so that was kind of cool to compare and contrast. And I think that's something that if we come across more shows or movies that we watch that have had that are remakes, like going back and watching the original, to kind of have those comparisons, I think is a fun little thing to be able to do and check out with those.
Yeah, because I think ultimately the spirit of a remake, a retelling, a reboot, like any thing like that, most of the time the spirit is to either pay homage to it, see if you can like add something new to something that like they likely enjoyed themselves, like the creator of.
Right.
So you often have to go into thinking like, well, they're not, you can't imagine often the attitude is like, well, I'm gonna do that better.
Oh
It's often
yeah,
like, oh,
it's
let's see if we can like add to that, or
or
maybe flesh
adapt it
this
to the
out a little.
modern times, and like yeah, so
Exactly.
definitely. And so it was cool to be able to have that comparison. But yeah, it's neat to see, and there were things that did change and all between the two, but for the most part, like the heart of the movie carried through pretty well into the show.
That's great. Yeah, very, very cool. I'm pretty sure Sarah was talking about Four Seasons, because I have Steve Carell in it,
Yep,
correct?
it
Yeah,
does.
I
Tina
think she may have
Fey,
watched.
Steve Carell. There's yeah, a few good ones in there.
Yeah, I think she may have watched like the first episode or two, so I'll have to see what she felt. Now my flavor of the week here, my food pretty simple, maybe just a different take on a crowd favorite here. We did some marinated chicken to make some fajitas, with some, sliced up onions and peppers in there and a nice and like a nice sauce. So that was really nice. Just wrap them up in a tortilla. So that was very tasty. Like I said, common kind of spin on something, or an uncommon spin on something we do normally. And then my music here on Thursdays, I usually vacuum the apartment. I usually clean the kitchen and vacuum the apartment on Thursdays. Every now and again, sometimes I'll have a pod on, sometimes I'll listen to music. Day and Age by The Killers. Listen to the full album, started at the top, listened all the
Okay.
way through while I was vacuuming. Hits different now that I'm older, but it was still an enjoyable listen. I didn't quite expect that. I was never like a massive Killers fan. I enjoy, some of their standout hits. But I remember always enjoying Day and Age as an album and going back to it. Yeah, as a vacuum windows open on a Thursday. Yeah, it was definitely a good vibe to enjoy. And then my visual medium here for the week over the weekend, we had the playoffs for I Am Dallas, the kind of final leg of the first season here for CS2 in the lead up to the major. And the playoffs were pretty good, I would say. This is the little element that I'll give you. So the finals was Vitality versus Mouse, best of five. Vitality wins 3-0, right? Very, very minimal jeopardy within each of the rounds. But to get to the grand final, Vitality had to go through Team Falcons. Right
Mhm.
now, their lineup looking really strong. So, unfortunately, this is what I'm getting to. For I Am Dallas, we basically had like what I would have loved to see as a final was Falcons v Vitality. Like you would have loved to see them on different sides of the bracket. They had to meet each other in the semifinals. That goes all three games, is obviously a banger. You have like the stars showing up on either side. So it was like just a very exciting game. Comes down to the wire as well. So I think the best series of the tournament, unfortunately, was in that semifinals. But the story is crazy. Vitality is on a 30 match win run. Not games, match wins. Some of them best of fives. I think three of them
Wow.
are best of fives. Six trophy lifts in the first were in May, so month five. Six trophies, 5 months.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
impressive. And I had seen a little bit about the Falcons Vitality matchup and all, and how
Oh, it
that
was
shook
so
out.
good.
Because from what I was seeing online, Vitality has just had Falcons number every time that they've come up against each other in recent memory, and so, but six trophies in 5 months is a pretty wild way to start off the year. And obviously, I'm sure lends themselves to be kind of the favorite coming into the major here that we have coming up.
Yeah, big time. So just an interesting little tournament there. I think just another notch in the belt there for Vitality looking ahead to the major. But yeah, just some great scenes for Counter Strike. Love to see it. So yeah, that's my flavor of the week.
Very cool. Well, with that being the end of the flavor of the week, that does bring us to the end of this Monaco Grand Prix episode here. So, as always, we really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen, spend with us. We love doing this and getting into some of the nitty gritty and our ideas and thoughts on the race weekend. So yeah, just thank you for spending your time with us.
Tell your friends and family. New episodes drop after each and every Formula One event. We're recording on a holiday, folks. This is for you. Each and every Formula One event, we've got an episode coming out right after. So thank you very much for listening, and peace out, everyone.
See ya.